What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Monster Truck Podcast. Today, Dustin and I are joined by a World Finals competitor, and more importantly, a brand new father. We welcome Bryce Kenny to the podcast. Bryce, how you doing, and how is the family? First and foremost, you just had a new kid.
That's right. Well, no, good to be on, and we sure did. We welcomed Keegan Kenny, which is it's probably the most Irish name you could come up with, but and Keegan means fiery one, and he's living up to his name. So in fact, I'm out in my call it a half shop, half garage, whatever word I'd probably use for this, but I'm out here because my 2-year-old is crying because she doesn't want to take a nap, and the 1-month-old is crying because that's what 1-month-olds do.
Hey, you got good sound quality out there, man. That's not bad.
Yeah.
And you can get away. All you need is a lock, you need a fridge, and a bathroom, and you're set to go, right?
Hey, man. Hey, you never know. Maybe it's exactly what I've got. So, no, I'm just kidding. We're in good shape. It's my own little man cave.
That's awesome. Well, you have been all over the place in your recent history in the sport. Took a little time off, of course, with the family through the Path of Destruction tour, but you hopped back on for the Nashville spot. What did you think of that whole experience and kind of hopping back in after a little bit of time out of the seat?
Yeah, I was rusty. I got to do MetLife Stadium, of course, and that was a blast. The fans were amazing. Nashville was amazing there at Nissan Stadium. And it was pretty nuts because both events really threw me for a loop because the track for both events were extremely difficult. You know, MetLife had poured most of the day on Saturday, and the dirt guys did an amazing job with getting us a good surface, a decent surface, and went out there and was able to take out Adam Anderson in round one in racing. Felt great about that, and I think I had surprised him just a little bit, which was good. And in round two against Tom Meents, I was right with him, maybe a tad bit ahead going into the last turn, and all that water had come back up to the surface after a full round of racing of all the trucks coming out and running on it. And that's just something that I didn't expect. So I learned a lot there and learned a lot. You know, every time I go out there and do one of these shows, I'm learning a lot about just dirt. I mean, that's not my background. So getting to do that was awesome. And then in Nashville, they used that stuff called paver base, which I didn't know was a thing. So,
yeah, the road base.
You know, the road base, yeah. So as we're going out there and checking that out, the track before the race, I'm going up to Tom Meents, and I'm like, Tom, how the heck do you drive on this stuff? What can I expect? So, didn't do probably my best there in Nashville. We were all very disappointed, I think. Not in the quality of the track, because I think, on Friday they expected this massive storm to hit Nashville. And so we didn't practice. They didn't put all the dirt down. We were running on about half the amount of dirt out there as we normally do. And so anyway, with that road base, it just produced a different element that, again, I learned a ton. Every time I went out there and stabbed the throttle, I learned something new. So unfortunately for the fans, hopefully next time I'm on that, then, we can put on a good show. But it was a lot of fun, and the fans were incredible. I came home with probably more posters and banners and things like that from the fans than any other show this whole year. So I had a lot of fun.
Never have to worry about decor in the shop, that's for sure.
That's right.
But yeah, going back to East Rutherford, and you surprised Adam in round one, I think you surprised a lot of folks there, because not taking anything away from your driving ability, but, Adam Anderson, multi-time racing champion, however many racing wins he's racked up over the last several years, etc.
Yeah.
You've got limited stadium experience. You've been spending most of your time inside the arenas and everything like that. But one of the things that I noticed really from watching your races was how you carried speed around the corners. You attacked them a little bit differently than most people. Sometimes it bit you a little bit. The second round against Tom, caught. I think it was the last turn was where you got a little bit out of shape. But otherwise, had the traction not changed right where you were, that might have actually been the pretty money spot, because you had one of the quicker times of the first round, if I remember correctly, as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Lindsey Wink was first, and I want to say I was maybe second or third. But it was funny because Adam came up to me after and just said, "Well, underestimated you." And I think I appreciate that because honestly, 9 times out of 10, Adam Anderson wins that. And so as a rookie and being someone that's so new, and we could talk about World Finals and qualifying, and I mean, I shot myself in the foot at World Finals the way that I approached that. I left World Finals saying I'll never drive conservatively again. I'll never, and it's not that I was trying to play it safe in Vegas, but I learned a lot on how to run these trucks out in Vegas. And so when I went into East Rutherford, I said, you know what, this trying to just get as much seat time as I can, and then slowly increase the speed. That stuff's for the birds, man. That's rubbish. And what I'd rather do is go on the edge, find the edge, probably go past that edge, go past center, so to speak, and wash out probably a couple times. But learning more, hopefully it's not going to take all that much time before I can learn when and where and how to dial it back, what turns, how much speed, then knowing how to kind of adjust appropriately on different dirt surfaces and track surfaces. And then hopefully, it's not going to be all that long before I'm really competing with these guys. And I want anyone I race to go, oh crap, I've got Bryce in the first round, and I'm not there, I'm not even close to being there. And I think Adam probably went in a little bit conservative in that first round, and I can't speak for him, but I'm assuming he did. And I don't think he expected me to make up almost a full second from my qualifying time to my race time. And for some reason, and call it my background, whatever you want to say, but on race day, something just clicks in my head where it's like it's like I was created for that moment or something. I mean, all the butterflies are way far gone. All of my focus is spot on, and all I can think about is let's take this thing to the limit. And with my background in Top Fuel, it probably is where it comes from. But anyway, I love it when people underestimate and hope that, well, I'll just go out there and be easy, take kind of an easy round win, and then hopefully, as long as people are thinking that, maybe I can sneak out a few round wins while I'm getting as much seat time to be able to really stay controlled. Right now, it's a little bit of chaotic speed. Hopefully, I can obviously pull that back a little bit to more control.
You mean it's not easy to control a 10,000-pound monster truck? Imagine that, right? So it's really been interesting watching that. And then for those that don't know, your background in Top Fuel. So you had the road base there in Nashville, and that's great. But it's nothing quite like Top Fuel. Tell us a little bit about your background in motorsports and getting started out with that in general, and then moving to Top Fuel.
Yeah, so the very first time I ever jumped in a race car was when I was 8 years old. Drove a junior dragster. My grandfather, he started back in the 1950s souping up Chryslers on old abandoned airstrips. And all of a sudden he became really, really good at it, and people started asking him to work on theirs. And so, from the 1950s until 2017, I have numerous uncles. I mean, my whole family has always been involved in drag racing. And so my grandfather owned a drag strip. So, when I was 8 months old, I think, is about the time he purchased that. So literally my entire life during the summers, I would spend going up to the racetrack. And when I wasn't weed eating the fence line or helping my uncle sell race fuel, I was in a race car. And I was working on the family race cars, and I was working on the junior dragsters and probably messing it up when I was 8 or 9, but having a blast doing that. And in 2001, my grandfather sold the racetrack and bought a Top Fuel car. And that was when I was 13 years old. And so as soon as he bought that, he started hitting the national event circuit. We raced in the IHRA. If people are familiar or maybe not familiar with the sport, you turn on the TV and you're watching NHRA, National Hot Rod Association. We ran in the International Hot Rod Association, which basically just meant we went to Canada. We included Canadian races. But a lot of the lesser budgeted teams would run an IHRA because we couldn't keep up with the NHRA guys. And it was an 8-car field, all that. Well, from 13 years old until 20 years old, I was working on the car, right? So I did everything from pulling the clutch to the bottom end, to pulling a cylinder head off, rebuilding that. And so I did everything. Even I would, every once in a while, it's not that I would ever help tune it, but I was always a fly on the wall when all the smarter people were in the trailer trying to figure out how we're going to tune these, 10,000 horsepower machines. And so I did everything on the car except for drive it. And when my grandfather retired from driving, he ended up having a heart attack at the end of Rockingham Dragway. Trying to pull him out of the car, and he's in the middle of having a heart attack. It was a bizarre story, but anyway, after he retired, that's when I stepped in, and it was about the same time that IHRA went away. Not to go off on a rabbit trail, but kind of a cool thing. That's actually when Feld Entertainment, who owns Monster Jam, bought IHRA.
Yep.
So they came in and purchased our organization, and I didn't know who Feld was. I had never grown up. I'd never even been to a Monster Jam show. And so Feld came in, and all of a sudden, the only thing that changed is all of a sudden there was this Gravedigger truck who I had heard about, who I knew about, right? I mean, who doesn't know about Gravedigger? Right. Showed up at these events, and Randy Brown would show up, and all of a sudden there was one of these nitro jams where, we were trying to we ran a Gravedigger truck side by side with a Top Fuel car. It was just all these really cool promo things that we ended up doing. But, long story short, the nitro jams didn't quite – they didn't have the same effect as a Monster Jam, and they were trying to make them a little bit of a similar product to turn these nitro jams and kind of mimic that Monster Jam show. We did pit parties. We did different stuff like that. It didn't quite take. I think it's a different demographic, but anyway, I ended up going off to college. It's about the same time I met Morgan Kane. I was match racing our Top Fuel car about that same time as well. Because IHRA was a Nitro Jam, we weren't running our car during Nitro Jam. I was working on the Lucas Oil Top Fuel car driven by Bruce Litton, and I call me a backup driver for him if you want, but that guy drove with kidney stones, so there's probably zero chance of ever getting in his car. But the guy was he's a machine. But we were match racing. We were trying to keep the team alive. We were going anywhere we could to do match races, North Carolina, Kentucky, Ohio, all of that. And then we ended up selling everything in 2011 when we just couldn't keep things going. So I got my license. I got my Top Fuel license. We were doing the match racing. I was trying to find funding to get over to the NHRA. I was at the point where I was actually going to make our chassis actually NHRA legal. It was going to have to be rebuilt on the back half of the car. And I was not desperate enough, but I was right there where I had never built a chassis before in my life. But I was going to go in and see if I could even, rebuild the back half of that chassis. And you and I probably both know how well that would have gone, going 300 miles an hour on something that I, as not a professional chassis builder, would have built.
But by all means necessary, right? Now that's something you've touched on about 8 things I want to follow up on, and we'll get to them. But the main one I just got out of that is a lot of times recent history with Feld, they have hired people that, for lack of better words, don't have any experience turning wrenches, but they have the look and maybe the other motorsports background and stuff like that. You might be one of the first that I've heard in recent history that knows how to rebuild stuff. I mean, I remember, talking to Dustin Brown, who came over from drag racing as well, and he would talk about, hey, we had to tear the whole car apart in between rounds and do all that stuff. So he had all of the mechanical knowledge and all of the respect for the equipment and for the people that work on it. I have been in pits where people have said, you guys have fixed this, right? And didn't really have the understanding of what it takes to get under there and, change a third member or do something like that. And it's nice to know that you have that, and I'm sure that your crew guys and gals appreciate that.
Well, it's funny that you say it because, and I'm sure at some point we can maybe jump into stuff from the season, but I will say it's actually, yes, I have more knowledge, but everything I'm doing is powertrain related, right? Right. Or drivetrain. Everything I know is in the motor. Yeah. Well, we don't do a ton of work in the motor while we're actually at the event.
Yeah. Thanks,
my crew. Exactly. My crew chief, Red, who has done a phenomenal job, he knows everything about the 4-link bar. I didn't even know what a 4-link bar was before I went up to Paxton.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know any of it. So, we're looking at this stuff, and I'm learning how they rebuild the shocks. And, yeah, I can grasp that stuff. But the hardest thing over these last 2 years has been the way that I translate things always starts with the engine first.
Yeah.
And you can't really do that with these Monster Jam trucks because it's not that the motor never lets go or there's never a motor problem, but the way that I try to communicate is it's almost like there's a language for the motor and there's a language for the drivetrain with the truck, right? Where you're dealing with the lockers and you're dealing with the third members and things like that. We never dealt with any of that in drag racing. Everything, lived and died off of that motor. So, I'm the one that's coming over the radio and going, Red, there's something going on with that mag. And sure enough, he'd go back and come back over the radio and be like, yep, the mag spun, right? So I can call that stuff out because I can hear it and I can feel it in my butt when I'm going out there. Mm-hmm. But if the left tire, all of a sudden is spinning and the right one's not, it took me the longest time to be like, hey, maybe the front locker might be going away on us. Or maybe we've got an inner axle braking or an outer axle braking or things like that. That's what has been so hard because the way that I interpret what the truck is doing is actually different than how my crew chief needs to hear about what the truck is doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's funny, you're talking about coming from your drag racing background where, like you're saying, so much of it is so crucial on just having everything tuned to the max with the engine. Mm-hmm. And really between engine power and just getting that traction to the ground is, that's about the two most crucial elements other than you pointing straight.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you had a lot of, difficulties, I guess, in trying to figure out how to translate everything back and forth there. How much of that did you encounter right away? Your first couple of times out in Paxton, were you like, okay, how in the heck do I translate this? Or, I don't quite understand, because like you said, you didn't have a monster truck background, whereas maybe, some of us that have been around the sport for a long time maybe could pick up on something like that a little bit quicker because we've watched it forever.
Right. I would say, it definitely, I'm still learning. So every time I go out there, I'm learning something else that the truck is doing, and I'm trying to interpret it and communicate it a different way. I would say that this season taught us the most because going out to the West Coast, our first 3 events, we kicked butt. We went out there, and I think we were third in points. We were right behind, and we were hanging with Jared Eichelberger and Cole Bernard. And we were winning. We were winning freestyles. We were winning wheelie competitions. We were winning donut competitions. We were winning racing, right? I was not winning very many speedster races. I wasn't winning very many ATV races. But, the 4 truck events, we were right there. We were running hard. The 4th event, it's like the wheels came off. And all of a sudden, we started chasing issues. And to go back to what you're saying, Dustin, and asking, for the next 6 straight weekends. Okay, so the first 3 weekends we were kicking butt. For 6 straight weekends after that, we fought that truck to the point where for 6 weekends straight, I never even cut the truck into a donut. I could not break it loose into a donut, let alone getting anything to do with something decent on a wheelie or freestyle was about the only thing I could do anything decent with because I could just carry momentum. But there was nothing where the truck was actually wanting to break loose. And we were out west. So a lot of the time, we were trying to figure out, is it just because the elevation? Well, it can't just be that because there's 7 other trucks here that aren't having this same type of problem. Mm-hmm. And the way that my crew chief interprets it is, well, let's check the inner axle, the outer axle. Those look good. The lockers, everything's checking out okay. And I'm looking at this truck and going, guys, I don't know if you're watching the run, but I'm telling you, I don't know what else to tell you aside from we are not getting power to the tires. There's no power going to the tires. And so we can check this, we can check that. Well, anyway, we probably I won't give you all the full context to it, but one of the things that I learned was, I should have changed my driving style. Now, I'll say this. We changed the way we were trying to cut into a donut basically every weekend because that was embarrassing, where you can't even get the truck to to break loose. There wasn't enough power to even do that. But even going to the wheelies, right? All of a sudden, we were rolling over on wheelies, and wheelies were my thing going into the season. Even the first 3 weekends, like, I mean, we were hitting the highlight reel. We were doing all that stuff. I mean, wheelies were my thing, and all of a sudden, all I was doing was rolling in wheelies, to the point where we were doing more body repair than anything else. And, you know, my awesome crew chief probably got, you know, he probably didn't have enough time to check out everything on the truck, because I'm, you know, causing him to go back there and fix a bunch of fiberglass.
Dude,
and
fiberglass sucks, man. It is so itchy.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm getting itchy just thinking about that. But
eyes and see if you can have your eyes itch for 3 days too. So but anyway, we fought that for 6 straight weekends. I did not change the way I drove even in the wheelie competition, because in my mind I said, we're going to find the problem and we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to change things. We're going to find it. We're going to fix it. Well, you can't do that for 6 straight. And I mean, think, like, saying this stuff out loud to you guys, it's kind of embarrassing. It's very humbling for me to even say this stuff out loud, because you would think that after 2 or 3 weekends you would adjust, right? But for me, it was like, all right, we've got to do something different, but we've got to fix the problem. Now, we still never really pinpointed the problem, but we changed the transmission. Actually ended up changing it to a bad one, and that's what happened in Portland. If anyone watched that FS1 coverage, it blew the transmission out right away because it basically was stuck in low gear. But anyway, we actually went through 2 transmissions, and we changed the locker as well. And 7th weekend out, all of a sudden, it was a totally different truck. And we went in, and that's when I won my first overall event. We started winning again. And so the last 3 weekends or so, you know, it was all of a sudden like, where did this come from BRYCE? Well, then all of a sudden we got thrown into Vegas and had an okay run out in Vegas.
Okay. And I got to stop you right there. Hold on. I got to be honest with you, just 100% honest and transparent. I hadn't been paying as much attention to you guys out there on that tour. I had been paying a little more attention to Dustin's half of the tour. I'd call him every week to talk about that. And then I watched Vegas and went, holy crap, what is this guy doing? I didn't know much about you coming into Vegas. And I watched your run, and I got to be honest with you, that was one of the best runs that I saw out there. And it came for me almost out of nowhere. I said, damn, Bryce can drive, and that was awesome. Like, several saves where I'm like, that's gone. Dear sweet Jesus, that thing is gone. And you brought it back. Like, at a certain point, there's some skill involved there, and I almost take offense to the fact that you said that was okay. That was one of the best runs that I saw out there.
Well, I really appreciate that, and all the stars aligned for us out in Vegas. And you know, I go back and I honestly go back and I watch my run, and I can't quite figure out, like, why. And I think it was because, to what you're saying, there was no expectation for me. In fact, there's a lot of people that were ticked off that we were even in the show. It's not like we earned it through the season, right? Mm-hmm. We had we didn't have a horrible season, right? But we had a very difficult season that I just outlined. Mm-hmm. And so for us to deserve to be in the #1 motorsports event in the world, yeah, it's not going to come from the season and the results there. But and we can get in maybe into that at another time. But to me, I go back and I look at my run, and I'm just thinking, maybe no one thought I could actually drive. But you got to realize, you know, we had 3 weekends leading up to Vegas where the truck was cooperating, and we could actually move it. We could actually apply horsepower to the track. And then we go out in Vegas, and I'll never forget before I came out there for freestyle, because I was cool as a cucumber. And all I was sitting there in the starting block, and I was looking out at 50,000 people in the stands. And for some reason, I wasn't even nervous. And it's not because I thought, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to tear this up. You got to realize, I was so frustrated all season long when we were fighting this truck. I knew the truck was right. I knew that that Dakota had done such a good job on this truck. It was right. And I thought, you know what? With this truck being right, we're going to come out here and we're going to have some fun. Forget everything else. No one even expects us to be here. A lot of people are mad that we're even here and running in the show. So let's take full advantage of it. All the stars aligned. I mean, you know, the first half of my run was tame. Then all of a sudden we had the save that went into the water. Everyone just thought it was super cool. I'll be completely transparent with you. My first thought whenever I landed on all fours in the water is, whatever you do, Bryce, do not get this Monster Jam truck stuck in the water. Like, do not let this pond somehow ruin your run and they have to go pull you out of the pond. That was my first. So I just stabbed the throttle. And if you watch the video, you can see, I mean, I'm throwing water and mud everywhere. Well, that's actually what went through my head. After that, it was like game on. The only regret I've got is not, trying a backflip. I was actually going to at the very end of the run where I had aired it out the very last hit. I was hoping to get it settled. My time had run out anyway, but I didn't care at that point. And I was going to land it and go straight into a backflip. Call it upstage, wherever you'd like to say it, but over by the wall of dumpsters. But it had thrown me so far left and kind of threw me over by the away from that backflip rim. So it wasn't meant to be, but sometimes, like I always say, it's like sometimes you need luck, sometimes you need skill. I think some of the best runs I've ever seen in Monster Jam are when you are able to combine both, and sometimes you get really lucky to the point where you're able to show a little bit of skill. And that's just kind of what happened for us out in Vegas. But yeah, we were happy with it, and I was just wanting to finish in the top half, and I would have been happy. And so to finish 8th in freestyle, second truck out, I mean, it's a testament to Dakota, it's a testament to Red, and us working through so many truck issues, to be honest with you.
Yeah, build some confidence. Dustin, go ahead.
Well, and to kind of go back, you were saying before, like wheelies were your sweet spot, coming into the season. And I remember getting to see you for the very first time in Raleigh the year before. And it was my first real exposure. Right? Yeah, and it was my first real exposure to actually getting to see you drive, because other than a little YouTube clip here or there, I hadn't seen you in person. So I kind of, to be blunt, came in with zero expectation. And then I get through the first show and I was like, oh, this dude's not too bad. Like, because it's not easy making things look cool in a hockey arena. And, it is a massive challenge, but you cut your teeth in that, running the Tundra Tour and this and that and the other, up north in Canada, doing all those shows. And then, I get to see you for the very first time, and I'm like, okay, he's got something here, because you were planting the truck, walking it across the pad, carrying good momentum. You were on the throttle, blipping it here and there, just doing all the right stuff, if you will, to kind of draw some attention into yourself without being too over the top, if you will. And I was like, okay, he's learned something very quickly in his time around this, because he's figured out, how to make it work inside of these arenas, figured out how to walk this truck, which is something, a lot of people don't catch on to very quickly. And, when I had asked the Norman brothers, what it was like having you, they were like, yeah, he's good. And I was like, all right, that's all I need to hear.
Yeah, those Norman brothers, man, they were a trip last year. I'm so happy to hear Christian's success this year and getting to drive. And it certainly it was a bummer for Fell to lose him. But we had a good year last year with those guys running Monster Mode. But to your point, Dustin, I mean, how many times have I seen Cam McQueen go out there for a freestyle, right? Last year on that tour that was on, to watch Sean Duhan go out there, and Sean was brilliant at knowing when to turn up the heat and turn it back down. Like he knew what the show needed, and to watch him adjust was phenomenal. And then I had Norm Miller, that was actually trailer mates with me. So he was in NEA last year and running all over. And so to watch Norm Miller do his thing, almost a 30-year veteran in the sport, was unbelievable. And so if I didn't do anything decent, it would have been a crying shame. And just to tell you how, I was floored with how Raleigh went last year. It was one of the highlights. It was definitely the highlight of my season. But you got to realize, I won one event all year last year. It was the very last event, and I won freestyle. That's how good our tour was, and we were kind of the forgotten tour last year up there in that Tundra Tour, to your point. But, that's how good it was. So then I go out to Raleigh, and I even told my family, like, hey, guys, don't worry. Don't, it's okay if I don't win anything. Because I had a ton of family come out there to Raleigh, because we're here in the Triad, Greensboro area, about an hour and a half away. All of a sudden I start winning all these wheelie competitions and speed and skill, and I don't think I got a freestyle win that weekend, but you get what I'm saying. All of a sudden it was like they were popping out over, out of nowhere. And I'm telling you, it was a result of being able to watch some of the best drivers in the sport all year last year, and then go out there and kind of stretch our legs a little bit and have a little bit of fun. So it was, man, that Raleigh show, that was a lot of fun.
Well, and kind of to your point and how you're saying, you were running with Cam and so on and so forth all winter long, and it was tough competition. Raleigh was not a slack show either by any means, because you're going up against Gary Porter, 30-something years of experience, dealing with Adam, who's arguably one of the best drivers in the sport all around. Yeah. You've got the Maryland contingent with Steve Thompson and Matt Cody, both of which spent a lot of time in arenas and have really figured out, especially Matt Cody, he's really figured out how to run those arenas as well.
Oh, yeah.
And Ryan Disharoon, another great up-and-coming, talent like yourself. A lot of people there at that show, like that for an arena show was a stacked little lineup. And
that's true.
You held your own on that weekend. And that was, my kind of big takeaway. When I saw you saying goodbye to the Norman brothers as I was doing the same thing on my way out that night, I was like, good work, dude. Like, you showed me something this weekend.
I really appreciate that. I really do. It means a lot, for real.
Well, you're talking about coming through and getting kind of cutting your teeth in the sport and everything. I want to kind of take it back a little bit to the Monster Jam University. And you've talked about learning from Tom and learning from Norm and all those other people. Can you kind of take us through what that whole process was like? From you got to test after the soccer connection with Morgan. You got to go out and test, and then you're going through Monster Jam University and all that stuff. I think it's a great program, a great idea to kind of get these newer drivers in and let them go cut their teeth in a low pressure environment. But not a lot of people know, other than, hey, we train these people, what goes on there. So kind of take us through your experience with that whole thing.
Yeah, it was pretty bizarre, pretty cool. And what's cool too, to take one step back, because I think people will appreciate this. Mm-hmm. The very first time I spoke with Morgan, or Morgan spoke with me about Monster Jam, and because I had just checked in with him, we were checking in with each other through the years kind of leading up to that, because he was driving Hulk at that point, and then Ironman, and then I was driving in Top Fuel. And so it was just kind of cool to go along. Well, we sold everything. And that's when Morgan said, hey, you need to give this individual a call. He's in charge of putting people in the truck. I said, I don't know. I've never even been to a show, right? And I give them a call finally after maybe a couple weeks. And I called them. I said, hey, I got your information from Morgan Kane. Not really sure what I'm supposed to do or say here, but, what do I do? What is this? They said, well, have you ever been to a show? I said, no. They said, well, you need to go out to a show. I went out to Greensboro, hung out with Randy Brown for a weekend. And after that, I called them back and I said, I would be interested in training in one of these. And that was in 2011. Yep. Okay. And they said, well, we've got a very stacked list of drivers that we are training right now. But, if the time's right, we'll let you know. I said, okay, great. I didn't really think about it again. Yep. And about once a year, Morgan would come down and we would go to the NHRA race in Charlotte together and just hang out. I'd see him about once a year. And every time he'd say, Bryce, are you emailing them? Are you calling them? And I'd have to admit, honestly, I'm not. And after that weekend, I'd usually send them an email. So about once a year, I'd send them an email. Well, it took them 4 years to call me back. And I finally got a call and they said, hey, we're with Monster Jam. Would you, timing is right for us. I don't know if timing is right for you, but would you be interested in coming up to train? And honestly, like I said, I'm coming from Top Fuel where I foot the bill. I didn't own any of the parts on our Top Fuel operation. That's a $1 million operation. Yeah. Okay. I didn't own that stuff, but I was footing the bill on trying to keep it alive, and kind of running and trying to piece all this stuff together. And so my first reaction to them was like, what do you mean? Because if someone were to come to us and say, we want to get our Top Fuel license, we would have said, great. It's $15,000 and, we'll make sure you get your Top Fuel license within, 6. You got 6 runs for that or whatever that number was for us back then. But so my first question was, what does that look like? What do you mean? Does that mean I'm flying? No, they said, no, we'll take care of getting you up there and your stay and stuff like that. We just want to see how you do. I said, well, so you're saying you're going to take care of everything. I get to come up there and drive a Monster Jam truck. I said, yeah. I said, well, of course I'll do that. So I ran up there and John Zimmer was training us that very first weekend. And it was more of kind of a tryout. It was interesting because we started off very basic, right? We started doing figure eights to get used to the rear steer.
Yep.
We did donuts. We did race jumps. That was pretty much the extent of it for the most part. And then at the end of that week, we did some media. And I think that's, again, at that point, I had a chance to do a lot of media stuff in Top Fuel. And I've always done a lot of public speaking and communication things. So I was, I think that honestly, I think that the driving, it's more of like a pass or fail thing for that very first weekend. And so they ended up bringing me back up. They said, we want you to come back up and we've got a truck in mind for you, but it's an arena truck, or the truck would be in arenas. And so we want to see how you do on the arena track. And so that's when I jumped out there and I worked with Tom Mintz. He was helping me get a feel for it. And it's funny because I go out there, my very first wheelie I ever hit, I launched it. Yeah. I launched it. And it was, and I didn't know, because I said, Tom, how do I hit this? He said, go up, and as soon as those front tires hit the obstacle, just nail it. Hit the throttle. I said, well, I can do that.
Yep.
So as soon as, I went up, carried a little momentum, and as soon as those front tires hit, stabbed the throttle as hard as I could, and sent the thing sky high. All I could see was blue sky out in Paxton, Illinois. And it felt like I was up in the air for eternity. Came back down, landed on the wheelie bar, and the front end dropped down. Total luck. Absolute luck. In fact, that was Tom's first question. I got the truck off the pad. He shut me off. He said, wow. Okay. Oh, boy. All right. Well, let's see if you're good or if you're lucky. Do it again. And I flipped it back on and went there. Well, I hit it the exact same way, and I skied it again. And I hit it the exact same way. Now you think I'm setting myself up to be a hero here, and I'm not. So he said, all right. He said, go and he said, all right, we're done with this obstacle. You got two really good ones. Let's go over here to the log stack. And if anyone's been to Arena Show, they've got the telephone poles. There's actually 4, but you can only see 3, and they're stacked on top of each other. Mm-hmm. Well, I hit that exactly the same way that I hit this tire obstacle. And Tom and I were trying to figure it out. I don't know if I accidentally hit it in first gear. I still don't think I did. But it, again, skied it. But the difference is it rotated itself. I was almost did like a gainer almost. Well, I went extremely high, came down, landed on the roof, and it knocked the wind out of me so bad. It was the very first time I thought, oh my gosh, like these machines, you got to respect them. Yep. You got to be careful. So anyway, but and it just kind of grew from there, and spent a couple weeks out there up with Tom, getting a feel for the truck, and again, you got to go past center. And you got to kind of go past zero, so to speak, or go over that edge to figure out what that edge really is. And that's what Monster Jam University is. It's finding that edge and then learning how to not cross it, or maybe how to back off of it just a little bit, and really go out there and have a controlled show from that we're going to put on ourselves. So, sure. But it was a lot of fun, and yeah, learning from 11-time world champion Tom Mintz was a blast. Did
the truck that they said they had in mind for you end up being the truck that you drove?
So I don't know, because that stuff they have to kind of keep it, call it under wraps, if you will. Yeah. I'll say this. I mean, this will be very transparent as well. I was very worried actually when I got that call saying they had a truck in mind. And the reason is that was the exact same month that Dalton Milliken died.
Oh no! Yeah.
Well, the guy that I ran against for years was Clay Milliken.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
If we ever beat Clay Milliken over in IHRA, who's still to this day the winningest driver ever in IHRA history, is Clay Milliken. If we ever beat him, it was like David beating Goliath. And that guy has been very, very special to our family. And so we hurt. I didn't know Dalton because he was, I want to say 6-7 years younger than me. So when I was 15, 16, as a clutch specialist, running around on IHRA with my grandfather driving, he was 9 or 10. I remember him running around. I remember talking and hearing from Clay, talking about all of Dalton's ATV success and national championship. I remember every bit of that, but I didn't know Dalton very closely, but we knew Clay. Mm-hmm. And so it really scared me. And in fact, I was afraid that I was going to get put in Blue Thunder.
Yeah.
I was even prepared to say no. and to walk away because I just didn't know. And then the other side of me was like, well, maybe I can kind of pay tribute to him that way and the Milliken family and all this stuff. And so I was very worried about that. Well, it turns out that it wasn't Blue Thunder. I never had a conversation with them about Blue Thunder. And it was for all of a sudden it was Monster Mutt. And I found out August, September. And the other short story to that is I remember telling my wife and a buddy of mine, I said, I don't really care what truck I'm in as long as it's not one of those dog trucks. Sure enough, I got put in Monster Mutt. But it ended up being such a blessing, and it was so cool to have that experience as well. So it ended up, again, all the stars aligned really, really well in so many directions.
Yeah. So kind of taking it back, to the more or less coming into the 2017 season, your world gets changed up a little bit in that you're getting shifted out of Monster Mutt and put into now this Great Clips MOHAWK Warrior role. And not only that, but your first show with it, Minneapolis, first time for you in a stadium environment, first time Monster Jam's in this new building, and it's the first time having Great Clips on board in their home market.
Yeah.
How did that weekend had to be a little bit stressful for you, I would imagine.
It was stressful. Minneapolis was stressful. I just wanted to go out there and perform well. We did not perform well on Saturday. Sunday was a completely different story. The problem is, to your point, Saturday was FS1 coverage, and Saturday is when we had 100 Great Clips folks that were in the stands. And Saturday was the show that just didn't go well. Missed the race ramp in qualifying. Didn't know that was a rule, by the way. Didn't know you couldn't do that. And even in Nashville this weekend, I thought it was just qualifying, right? I learned the hard way in qualifying in Minneapolis, to your point, a year ago, that, you got to get all four or you get a 5-second penalty. I'm in Nashville against Scott Puto, and the very last turn, again, I pushed it out too wide and kind of crawled over it and then just kind of accelerated through the finish line. Obviously, it's not faster to do it that way, so I don't understand why that's a rule, but I've not been around the sport long enough to have much more of an opinion. So they ended up giving me 5-second penalty in racing against Scott Buto, first round. I was like, what? We're racing. What? Again, my own background, Top Fuel, was like, why is there a 5-second penalty in racing? It's first to the line, right? But anyway, so Minneapolis didn't go that great on Saturday, but on Sunday it was great. Qualified 6th, beat Lindsey Wink in round 1, and then almost came up and I was right there at the finish line with Tom Mintz in round 2, and that's with, if anyone caught the save that Monster Jam just put on Facebook a couple days ago, that was from Minneapolis. Against Tom, when I just was going for broke. It was like, I'm going to get to the finish line and we're going to have a little bit of fun, and ended up rolling the truck and ended up on all four. So Minneapolis was a huge learning experience on Saturday. Unfortunately, Sunday was by far our best show, but it was a huge learning curve, though.
Yeah, because it was funny to kind of see, because, doing rehearsal on Friday and then the show on Saturday, and it's kind of like, man, like, it's just something's, like, I hope tomorrow goes better, get the butterflies out of the way, and just, just see how it goes. You already got this bad night out of, just get it out of your system and be done with. Yeah. And in your defense as well, the truck did end up having some issues. I remember talking to Phil Norman, the next day, and he's like, yeah, we had to change the front housing and this and that and the other. And just, it was a long, long night. But then you come back in the next day, fresh, the truck's good, and got that just a little bit of extra experience, and it was a night and day difference. And like you said, you took out Lindsey Wink in round 1, who was the previous night's racing winner, and was dominant the night before. So, you come in, you do well, and then freestyle-wise as well, even after having, the little bit of the barrel roll save, if you will, from your racing pass, came out in freestyle and burned it down. I mean, I think you had everybody's attention all of a sudden, like, oh, hey, yeah, okay, that's why this guy's here.
Well, and even to your point, Friday night rehearsal and practice, we had a front steering pump that it didn't end up, I think they ended up changing it anyway. But yeah, that was the first time that truck had seen the track, because that was a brand new chassis with all previous Blue Thunder parts on it. And I don't know if I think it did make it out to the test track for a quick shakedown, but that truck was put together, I want to say, in less than a week, where it was taken off of Blue Thunder and put on this chassis. And so, yeah, I went out there, and to your point, I mean, we go out for practice and had no counter steer, and I just kept fighting it. So everyone kept saying, do you want another practice run? I kept saying yes. And it's not like it would have made any difference, because going around that last turn, when you try to bring that front end back and counter steer it, there was nothing. Well, it ended up just being a low fluid issue. We just, again, after I think they did shake it down to the test track, but after that, no one went back down to look and see if the fluid level had adjusted itself. So, again, you live and you learn, right?
You talk about that you're constantly chasing stuff on the truck, and, the 6-week period where things didn't go so well, and, the monster trucks have the most moving parts, it seems, of almost any motorsports vehicle. And so when people say, well, why didn't they fix it? Well, it's not that they weren't going through top to bottom. It's just that it takes a while to get from top to bottom. And if you do any more damage during the show, plus travel, plus all that other stuff, it might take that long to get to the issue of something like that. It's great that you have some people that can come through and cover that and take care of business for you. There's two things that start with C that I'm going to throw at you that I'm getting as I'm doing this with you is, you were building confidence, and you're a competitor. And I love to see that. I came up watching, the old TNT Motorsports and all the old monster truck stuff where competition was a big thing. It is all about the fans. We wouldn't have jobs if it wasn't for them. But I like to see somebody get after it and go, you see that guy over there? I want to beat him. I want to win. I don't just want to show up and get a check. I want to beat this guy. And I'm seeing that. You're getting all excited and just talking about going against Lindsay and Tom and all these guys. I almost had him. I want to get it. It's great to see that, man. And, doing soccer and stuff like that, the sports background. I played basketball at a pretty high level for a long time. And it's nice to see that there. Do you think that came from doing sports and then the drag racing and stuff like that? Is that something that you're actively trying to bring to Monster Jam?
I wouldn't say actively trying to bring it necessarily, but I'm not trying to hide it. Right? Where, yes, it definitely comes from drag racing, and it comes from playing, soccer at a Division I college and having to compete. I love competition, to your point, and I think that that's where things evolve. I think that's where things grow. I think that's where the sport continues to build upon itself, and I think we've got an awesome opportunity to do that. And also, the flip side of that is you are putting on a show. So if we all went for broke every single time we hit the throttle, well, you're not going to end up with a very positive show either. And so I do think that there's called a Jekyll and Hyde thing with me at times, because I think that there are times when I know I need to turn it up, and there's times when, well, gosh, we had a ton of damage last night. We're not going to mail it in. We're not going to play it safe, but we're not going to just destroy the truck tonight either. We're going to keep it on all fours. And we're going to do that. And at the end of the day, as people don't like to hear this, but the advantage I do have coming in from a different sport and me running that, trying to keep have a team survive, is I understand more of the business aspect of this. And no one likes to talk about that.
Absolutely.
No one, a diehard fan, a nostalgic Monster Jam fan, they hate change. And it's like all they want to see are no corporate sponsors and crush cars. And I get it. Like, I'm not saying that that's crazy, but I do, I have less patience for people that don't want to see things get better. And people say, well, it's fine just how it is. No, it's not. Now, here's exactly why I say that. This motorsport, the reason I made that phone call originally, and I decided it was interesting to enough to go and train, I made that first phone call. It is not because I looked at a Monster Jam truck fly through the air and thought, I want to do that. Okay? I have a blast driving these trucks, and I am competitive. But the reason I made that phone call was because you got to realize 2011, we just had come out of the worst economic recession that the country has seen since the Great Depression. Yep. Me going out there and trying to find $1.5 million in sponsorship and Top Fuel was next to impossible at that point. People were, the NHRA was struggling. Every form of motorsports was hurting, except for Monster Jam.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
they have
absolutely.
done something right. And the reason why they have so much attention today is because of the work that they did 5 years ago to try to evolve and to try to change. And they're continuing to see if they can make this better. And when most monsters or motorsports out there are just begging to survive, and sponsors are pulling out of groups like NASCAR left and right, and things like that, you see a group over here like Monster Jam that is growing and surviving. And yes, change hurts, but let me tell you, I think there's good change and I think there is bad change. But I believe that Monster Jam, ever since I first hit a show in 2011, I have been obsessed with watching them push the limits and try to make this better. So I do have less patience for people that don't want to see anything change. They want to go back to the 1960s. But at the same time, I get it, because people are nostalgic about this, and people, want the reason why they first became a fan. A lot of people, they became fans 30 years ago, and the shows aren't even what they look like when they were 30 years ago, and they're at this difficult pull for their attention, and they got to make that decision. So I do get that, because I'd probably feel the same way with drag racing. We went from running 1,320 feet, a full quarter mile in top fuel, down to 1,000 foot. Because people were dying, and NHRA was like, we got to have people stop dying, and we can't slow these cars down, so we're just going to lengthen the area of shutdown and go to 1,000 feet. Well, you would have thought that the sport had died, and 80% of the people were like, this is ridiculous, we're not going to do this. Well, today we have much fewer deaths, and people don't complain as much about 1,000 foot. I was on that side of the fence that was like 1,000 foot, that's ridiculous, they're killing the sport. So I do get it, because I had that experience in a different environment and a different sport. So I don't throw too big of a stone when people are kind of against change with Monster Jam.
Hey man, God forbid you put great clips on the side of Mohawk Warrior and bring a little money into the sport, right?
Well, I think Mohawk Nation will appreciate the fact that that's one of the reasons why this truck is still out there.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it started off, and it was gangbusters and huge support, huge. Back in when George first built this around, and it wasn't doing as well. And so and there is a lot of context behind me being in this truck, and a lot of people think I kicked George onto an international tour, and that's not the case. There were decisions made long before Great Clips came around, or the idea that Bryce Kenny was going to be in this truck. There were big decisions that took place long before any of that. But you take the good with the bad too, and there's as many drivers out there that, think that I shoved somebody in front of a bus as there are fans that think that. But again, you take the good with the bad, and my role in this is to grow the sport. I want to try to make it better. My goal is not to make it a corporate environment, but let's make this all better. How can we get more How can we get more fans in the seats? That's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah, get some eyeballs on the product, but you mentioned having 100 people from Great Clips in there at the Minneapolis show. Maybe they went and had a great time, and they're going to take their kids the next time that Monster Jam comes to Minneapolis. And we're getting into the second generation and the third generation of drivers and everything. And George had a great run in the truck. I knew him well. Real quickly, I never got the impression of what you were saying about moving him out and stuff like that. But did you have any chance to speak with him, or how much interaction have you had with George? I'm sure you probably get that a decent amount.
Yeah, we have spoken more through social media stuff. We ran an event together last season, but I was in Monster Mutt, and of course that was way before anything going into this year. And so we kind of talk more on messaging on Instagram and things like that. And he said that he supported it. He was like, listen, welcome to the team, and I'm looking forward to come out and watching you at a show, and hopefully maybe you can come watch us in Europe at some of the shows I run in. So it was a good dynamic, a healthy dynamic when it came to George, and that guy's a legend, man. He's one of the guys that has helped to build this and turn this sport into what it is, and he deserves that recognition. And there is a lot of respect that needs to be paid to George Belhan for not only just Mohawk Warrior, but again, growing the sport and making it better. That guy's a legend.
Well, and you kind of bring an interesting point to that, because for maybe a long time monster truck fan like myself or Robby, we think of legends in terms of the guys that we grew up watching. So whether that be Dennis Anderson or Gary Porter or Tom Meents or Andy Brass or Dan Runte or whoever. But you make a very valid point in terms of drawing in and attracting new audiences and new different, perspectives as far as the type of people that are being put in the seats. Because, again, going back to your point in how other motorsports were hurting tremendously back in that era, like you're talking about. And that Greensboro show, I'm pretty sure I was at too, strangely enough. But yeah, to get to your point, Monster Jam was branching out and continues to do so in terms of attracting new and different demographics. Because again, I think a lot of the general population sees monster trucks as dumb hillbilly stuff. And they don't really think about the fact that Monster Jam can pack a 70,000 seat stadium in Jacksonville on one, the same time that they're packing a 50,000 seat stadium somewhere on the other coast, and then however many hockey arenas around the world. They don't quite understand just how massive the brand is, because it's kind of like the redheaded stepchild of motorsports is kind of what I've always used. And they've branched out. And to get back to the point of George branched out and had a different look, a different persona, something different than what we were used to seeing within monster trucks. Because for the most part, it was the good old boy. It was the Gary Porter and the Dennis Anderson that, was the blue collar guy that, liked his country music and, all that good stuff. And George comes in and, he's got spiky hair at one point, or, the Mohawk, of course, now, as we know. He's got, he's coming in with a different image, and he's attracting a different kind of fan. And you could see that it was catching on because, kids are showing up with Mohawks and into the punk rock thing, and, going all the way back to Escalade and having the truck with the chrome chassis and spinners and lights on it and everything like that.
I'm just going to say real quickly,
something different.
I'm just going to say real quickly, those spinners and that sound system and all that stuff, whoever crewed on Escalade, because I rolled with them for a while, dude, that was such a pain. All that extra stuff, but they did it without complaint every week. And to Dustin's point, it was always something that turned heads, and it was
shout out to Bobo.
Yeah, exactly. Ben Winslow out there doing work. The point was though, it was always turning heads. It was something different. It wasn't just status quo, and that's how you move towards progression and more eyes on the product.
Yeah, well, and to think about that, to go from what it was then. And even to what it is now, and the stuff that George did in the truck, right, and pushing the limits there and doing that, you'll never get. I think, and I think this is one of the issues. I think people think, well, if my eyeballs, if you're asking me to switch my eyeballs from Dennis Anderson to this new rookie, then you're trying to manipulate me. I almost feel like some people feel that way. That's not the case. It's like. You never have to take your eyes off of someone like a Dennis Anderson and a Tom Meents and and Gary Porter. Like, those guys will forever live on in almost this almost this not even just a legendary format, but there's just because someone like George Bellhane comes on the scene in 2011. What would the sport be like if Mohawk Warrior never even came about? Like, it's only going to drive new eyeballs into the sport. And those eyeballs are going to be like, oh, that's okay. I've always heard of Gravedigger, but that's Dennis Anderson. Wow, that's pretty cool. You never know who they're going to all of a sudden. Maybe they hopefully stay a Mohawk Warrior fan. But the point is, the more people that come into the sport and the more people that are driven into the seats at a Monster Jam show, that's good, because they are going to be able to call it pay homage, whatever word or phrase you want to use. That's why it's important. For a Gary Porter and a Tom Meents and a Dennis Anderson, because without this new rookie driver that's going to pull this brand new fan base into the sport, they would have never known Tom Meents' name or even Dennis Anderson's name. They would have only known it as Gravedigger. So we've got to recognize that just because things look different doesn't mean actually it's bad. Yeah. And it actually can still promote the idea of someone, hating anything but Gravedigger, lifelong Gravedigger fans, that kind of stuff. So, but it's a little bit of I know it's a fine line, but we've just got to, everyone, including myself, we've got to open up our eyes to a little bit of change, because I think it'll serve all of our purposes. I really do.
Absolutely. And with how many trucks they're running through there, the cars kind of get beat down, to your point earlier too. So as we go through here and talk about the rest of it, You talked about Tom, talked about going through there. Would you say that that Tom was probably the person that helped you the most through, the beginnings of everything? And if so, maybe there's some other people too. Who would you say from a driving standpoint really helped you and gave you the most pointers and stuff that stuck with you in your years driving now?
Yeah. So first of all, it would be Tom Mintz for sure, because that guy obviously taught me how to drive a Monster Jam truck. Mm-hmm. And the things I do well, I'll credit Tom, and the things I do poorly, I'll say it's me learning. so Tom's off the hook, right? But I'll say this, man, the guy it took him probably a couple weekends to take me under his wing, just because I would be skeptical too of anyone new that's on the scene. You just kind of check it out and say, hey, what are they about? Because if I've learned anything, the size egos that are in Monster Jam, I will say at times, are larger than I've ever experienced. Mm-hmm. So it took a couple weekends, but Cam McQueen took me under his wing a couple weekends in, and that guy was phenomenal. He was so good at saying, what if you did this? What if you did that? And I'll look back at even Vegas to be able to do that. I prepared for my Vegas freestyle. It was almost like I even remember this. I was standing on top of the where they put the bus hit. I'll call it the bus hit. But I was standing on top of that, and I remember thinking, like, what would Cam McQueen tell me that he was going to do for this, that. So I kept thinking almost as if Cam was sitting there and mentoring me or counseling me on that track. And I guess I've never really thought about that until I'm sitting here talking to you about that. But as far as show flow, putting a freestyle run together and how to think through, when you're actually there at the event, Cam was monumental in helping me do that.
Well, and it's funny, you're talking about Cam bringing you under his wings, if you will, and kind of showing you the ropes a little bit and getting you acclimated to the whole world. And how you were saying that you had come into, driving a truck role and, maybe some skepticism about whether or not you're worthy of taking over this position that has been associated with one driver in the past, and then to bring it back, full circle, Cam was in kind of a similar role when he first started to get into the sport as well. Robbie actually met Cam years back when he was crewing for Kreml and Pauken. Years back, Cam would just show up at the show in Vancouver and want to help out or whatever. But when Cam first got in, there was kind of that, oh, he's Travis Pastrana's buddy. He's getting a gimme gig. He's not really not really all that deserving. This and that, and the other. When he got into the World Finals, nobody was really expecting a whole heck of a lot. Hey, what has this guy done to really even deserve it? Mm-hmm. He's driving the Pastrana name, this and that, and the other.
Meanwhile, what most people don't know is he did come to the Vancouver show, and as we're all sitting around like dummies before the show, he goes, "Hey, that Heim over there, that looks a little bent on Gravedigger, the money-making truck at the time. This is the guy that's going to go out last for freestyle. Chucky would have torn the Heim up, torn it off the truck. It was bent. And who jumps in there and helps us? Cam. He went in there, and we changed his Heim out real quickly before the show. It was about 10 minutes before the show, before we had to go out and do intros. And if he hadn't done that, who knows? But you know what? That's how you get started. That's how you do it. He got in there, and it wasn't a gimme. It wasn't a riding on somebody else's coattails, and he knew how to fix stuff and do things. And stop me if that sounds like somebody that drives Mohawk Warrior now.
Yeah, I hear you. I didn't know that history. He never told me that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he got in there.
You gotta, it's funny though to hear, kind of that was who kind of took you under his wing. So I think I can understand, and I'm not to put words into Cam's mouth, but I think he kind of knew where you were coming from a little bit. And, granted you were in Monster Mud at that point, but, new guy coming in, hey, is this guy really, going to be worth it? Or is this just another face that they're sticking in and just, pushing through kind of thing. And, plus Cam's just an awesome dude. Like, super fun to talk to. He's a trip. You can't help but laugh when you talk to Cam McQueen. So that was a good bunch you got stuck with. You may have been stuck in the frozen north, but you had some characters because you had the Norman brothers, you had Cam, you had Paulie Dude and Fry Daddy. I mean, that right there is worth doing anything. You can put me on whatever schedule they've got, and I'm going to be happy with it because I'm going to be laughing most of the time.
That's right. Oh, we had some good times, man. We really did. And And to think, I think that we all approach it the same way. I think that's why even as a rookie, like I kind of look at it similarly to maybe some of the way that some of the veterans do. And what I mean by that is I'll never forget, I rode, I was teammates with Becky McDonough last year up in Bangor, Maine. And I remember because that was the last show I had for the year. And obviously I didn't have a clue about this year and how it would go about. Well, I remember maybe I had a weird look on my face or something. But at some point, Becky and I were talking, and I said, this could be it. She said, well, what do you mean? Like, that's what do you? I said you never know what could happen in terms of just from a business aspect. I wasn't worried about getting hurt or something like that day. But I remember because it was our very last show, and I said, there's nothing ever guaranteed in motorsports ever. And this could be the very last time that I jump a Monster Jam truck. And I remember not being sad, but I remember being grateful. And I remember being excited about the show. And I thought, because I always want to be at the standpoint of, you know what, if this was it, and for some reason, the ideas or the goals changed for Monster Jam and they needed someone else and they didn't need me anymore, that I'm going to come out here and I'm going to enjoy this last show. And I did. And I don't know that the veterans think of it that way. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I do think that I remember going to dinner with Sean Duhan and Cam and Paulie and Fry Daddy and the Norman brothers. And I just remember getting that sense like, you know what, life is pretty cool. And it's like everyone recognized in that group that it wasn't going to be forever. And that you've got a very short window in time and in life to do really cool things. And if there's ever anything that is never guaranteed, it's going to be something in motorsports. And drivers know that too. Drivers are always saying, or they know in the back of their head, we don't really talk about that much, the fact that things do change. And if you would have asked me 5 years ago that I would be in Monster Jam doing what I'm doing, I would have called you absolutely crazy, because I was the most passionate human being you've ever met about Top Fuel and being over in NHRA. And it crushed me when I did not get over that and we had to sell it. It absolutely crushed me. And that's why when people come to me and they say, they kind of wonder why I'm passionate about Great Clips. I'm passionate about Monster Jam from a business. I'm looking at this from a wider angle rather than just, I get to go to Lebanon Valley. Look at me. Look at Bryce Kenny. I'm not worried about that, because I remember how hard it was pulling back into my driveway after the last time I drove that Top Fuel car, and I knew it was over. Yep. And I remember that there's only been a handful of times that I would tell you that I wept. Okay, I wept that night because I knew that was over, at least for a season, at least for a point in history. And I knew that for my family. See, it was just as much fun doing it with my grandfather, who built this and pioneered it, and remember been doing it for 60 years. But I remember that feeling of just total, call it devastation. And so coming into this, I knew I would not allow myself to not feel that way, because you've got to drive with some emotion. You've got to do everything you do with some emotion. And you could probably, like you said earlier, you can hear me kind of throw it into the way I'm talking about this. I am emotional and passionate about what we're doing in motorsports, but people don't understand how badly I wanted to do the things that I get to do for a company as awesome as Great Clips, because they are an amazing company. And the chance to do that, I was begging someone to give me that opportunity in Top Fuel. I was so desperate for that opportunity in Top Fuel to go and make a fool of myself on a social media video, or something to help a brand, because I wanted that so badly. So again, the fact that I get to do that, and I think it's a fraction of what we'll be able to see. I do think that this is the start of something great, whether it's Great Clips, whether it's a different company on a different truck. It doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is, there's so many great opportunities to do it that way and to benefit and be a blessing and get more people involved in an awesome sport like Monster Jam. And the fact that I felt like I failed and I don't look at it really that way. Probably wouldn't even use it that word. But the fact that I look back at Top Fuel and it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, and it was so devastating to me, that's why every single morning when I wake up and every single time I jump on an airplane to go to a race or go to an event now, I never forget how hard it was that night, weeping in my car, knowing that that chapter was closed. So I do feel like that Monster Jam gave me the second chance and a chance I never expected I would have had. It's certainly a different avenue, but I can assure you that every single time that I come out there, every pit party I go to, I will never take for granted an autograph that I signed, because there for a 4-year stint, there wasn't anyone asking for my autograph. Mm-hmm. And I know how that feels, and I know how it feels to not have people want to say, man, you're a good ambassador for us. Let's partner with you. I want you to be an ambassador for our brand. I remember how badly I wanted it, and I didn't get it. And so I'm going to protect that now with everything I can, and hopefully the sport's better as a result. But hey, time will tell.
Well,
it's very cool to kind of sit back and, one of the things that I picked up on from when I had first met you, and I remember after the show in Minneapolis, we chit-chatted in the hotel restaurant after the show and just kind of hanging out, getting to know one another. And one of the things that I really took from you is that you're very passionate about being involved in motorsports. And I think, having your lifelong background in it, and you got to understand firsthand being, so deeply involved in a motorsport and going through the grind of trying to keep up with sponsorships and everything like that, because motorsports, no matter how you try and make them profitable, they still end up being almost a bottomless money pit. And you understood the grind of having to bend over backwards to try and meet all these obligations. You have to perform on and off the track. It's not just the results of going down the track and crossing the finish line. And, getting to hear even more of your business perspective of it as well. A lot of people don't get that business aspect of the sport, and they don't understand, well, why is this corporate entity with this and that, the other. But you get it, and you understand that, okay, I'm blessed with this opportunity right now to basically work hand in hand with this company. I need to take everything that I've gotten with it and run with it, because you understand just how gut-wrenching it is to have the rug pulled out from under your feet and know that there may not be another day to race. Because it's easy for everybody to get kind of jaded when you're burnt out and you've had so many shows in a row and been on the road so much. I mean, you and I were at the airport at 4 o'clock in the morning 3 weekends in a row. That sucks. Yeah. But, and again, for every one of those crappy, got to be in the security line at 4:15 in the morning, you really don't want to be. Mm-hmm. It's easy to get jaded and all that. But at the same time, when it's showtime, it's 6:59, the trucks are in the tunnel and fired, that adrenaline rush that kicks in, it's like, yeah, like you're saying, hey, this ain't all that bad. Life is pretty freaking cool that, you get to do this, get to be a part of something like this. And it's one of those things, like, it's what keeps you coming back almost, I feel like, is that you understand that you're doing something special and something fun that not everybody else gets a chance to do. And it kind of keeps you grounded a little bit. Granted, it's a different role in what I do versus what you do, but regardless, we're all still a part of putting together this cohesive element that is in front of, whether it be, 8,000 fans in an arena to, 60,000 plus in a stadium. Yeah.
And if you were to ask me, what I wish could be different about my experience, and this is like a life thing, it's not a motorsports thing even, but if you were to wish me, or if I could change anything about my experience in Monster Jam, I wish that the stripes that I earned in drag racing could translate into stripes earned in Monster Jam, but that's not how the way the world goes. People look at me and they do look and they say, you're brand new, you're a rookie. And again, people think I shoved somebody in front of a bus. And I want to look at it and go, to your point, people don't understand the late nights for years as a kid. When I was in middle school, everyone asked me when you're in elementary school, people say, what do you want to do when you grow up? And you can say a race car driver, and they say, oh, that's adorable, that's cute. And then you're in middle school, and they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you say a race car driver, and they say, well, okay, that's interesting. But so how do you get into that? They start kind of pushing back a little bit. And then in high school, no one asks you what you want to be anymore. They say, where are you going to college?
Yeah.
You know, where are you going to school? You know, what are you going to do for a career? And it's not that that's a bad question, but I do think it's the wrong question that we start asking in high school. And I was the one that kept saying I'm going to be a race car driver.
What's your passion? That's a better question.
Yeah, what are you passionate about? Yeah, I think that's a great question. And so, I am that kid that probably held on to his race car bed too long. I don't know. You know, I'm not going to tell you guys whether I still sleep in one.
Hey, I said you need a bed out in the shop. That's a good look.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and to kind of, bring it full circle once again, going back to you saying Cam McQueen took you under his wing, one of his kind of, constant reminders that, he puts out there whenever he does his interviews and everything like that is he goes back and he even remembers the teacher's name and everything like that. He had a teacher in high school and they asked, what do you want to do for a career? He said, I want to be a monster truck driver. And the teacher laughed at him and said, you'll never do it. Made a fool out of him for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Absolutely.
Just to kind of make it a little bit lighter as we move through, you've mentioned a few things that you like, a few things you like to do in your spare time. I imagine you don't have a great abundance of spare time with the children running around and everything, but what else are you passionate about doing in your spare time?
Yeah, I think the fun things that I'm doing right now is I've got a 1970 Mustang Mach 1, and I've had it. It's been in my family again, that same racing family since the 80s. It was my very first car when I was about the time we got into Top Fuel, 13. I bought it. Took me 3 years to restore it, and that's what I did with my summers. In the summers, I didn't go to the beach growing up, chasing girls. I went up to work at the family racetrack and work on my hot rod. And so I still have that. The motor's starting to seize up on me, so I do need to get that out of there and rebuild it. But I like tinkering. I like doing that stuff. I'll be honest. Right now, I do have enough free time, call it that. I've always wanted to run my own business, own my own business, and I think that is, on the near immediate horizon of being able to do that and run that. I think that way. I think in terms of big picture and business categories and things like that. So I'm excited that hopefully this next chapter for me is going to involve creating and building and doing that. And so thankfully that my situation with Feld right now, I can go drive Monster Jam trucks on the weekend and come home and build something business during the week, and then I get to hang out with my family and be with my kiddos at night. And I think that's a pretty good next 12 months for me if that were going to be the way I described it.
Good life balance for sure. Is it still so in progress that we'll just leave that there, or is there a category this business has, stuff that you want to shout out or promote?
No, not necessarily. We're still working through a couple things. I'm working with some guys here in my area here in North Carolina that's what they do. They build it, they grow it, and they sell businesses. And I happen to get kind of hooked up with some of them that need somebody that can do just that. So it'll be nice because I won't be on an island, just kind of doing my own thing, but and I'll get to go and run that. So nothing to plug or anything like that yet, but maybe in the future I'll take you up for it, and you can throw some good stuff on your Twitter. My Twitter is just flailing, by the way, so you need to give me a hookup there anyway. And
we always shout it out at the end, but we'll go ahead right now. It's at Bryce Kenny here on Twitter.
There you go.
He needs.
I just never did Twitter. I never really cared for it, and then about 6 months ago, I was told that I need to reboot it. And I said, okay. So I think I'm at like 500 followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
And about 10 of them read what I put out.
Well, hey, you post a couple of videos of, like you said, dancing around, having a little bit of fun, and the people will flock. They flock to cute puppy videos on the internet. When you worked really hard on your monster truck videos, you throw a couple puppies and kittens in there, you're gonna be good to go.
All right, good.
Yeah, well, one of the things that you've talked about is understanding, your branding and everything like that, and you're having to learn, also coming up in this new era of how to promote yourself in social media and everything like that. And I've seen, you bounce around, whether it be, doing your Instagram stories here and there, whatever. One of the things that I think gets lost on a lot of people is that people are just genuinely interested in other people's lives, not just, what you do at the track. And that's one of the things that you've crossed over with your social media. I feel like I know your daughter. I've seen her enough on Instagram and everything like that. I feel like I almost, go up and say, hi, hey, how are you? And be like, wait, you don't know me already?
Yeah. Yeah, you can.
It helps. It helps that you got helps that I've got a cute kid. Number one, that always is But fathers, you're always biased to your own kids. So I think she's the greatest thing in the world, and I'm sure other people are like, yeah, she's a cute 2-year-old, but stop posting, pictures of it. So I could probably see both sides for sure, but I do have a lot of fun on that, and she would welcome a friendly hug from Dustin Hart at any point, I'm sure.
It's kind of hit and miss with me because being 6'4" and long hair and a beard, they kind of you get the funny look. Like I've been in more than enough pit parties where you got the kid that's kind of running around awestruck and then bumps into your leg and looks up at you and they're like,
you got a kind of a Sasquatch thing going on. Is that what?
Yeah, man. I definitely. I was in the running to be a Geico caveman at one point, but then that, their marketing changed gears, and so that
awesome,
flipped out from underneath of me. I know what it's like.
Hey, Dennis Sanderson has a nickname for Dustin too.
What's that?
Hippie.
Hippie. I like it.
Yeah. That's gonna grow.
I can see it too. That's good.
It was just Dennis, and now Steve Sims is on it, and it's gonna, now that it's public, it's gonna go haywire. But
yeah, well, that's all I'm gonna call you. So there you go.
Now that I've got one other person to worry about at the airport now to call me hippie.
You're welcome.
Right.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Well, listen, Bryce, it's been great having you on. If you do have anything you want to plug, anything you want to tell people about you or their career and everything like that, you can follow Bryce on Twitter. It's Bryce Kenny. Of course, on Facebook, it is facebook.com/BryceKennyMJ. And it's actually business.facebook.com/BryceKennyMJ, as you were saying. Yeah, so anything else you got for us? Anything you want to promote, talk about, want the people to know?
No, I would say that at the end of the day, let's grow this thing together. Let's keep an open mind across the board. And I think that the best thing in the world and the number one thing that I love to hear about is when somebody that's passionate about Monster Jam brings a friend and grabs them by the arm and says, you got to come check out these guys, this guy named Tom Mintz, and you got to check out this guy named Cam McQueen. You got to come to this show, and they bring a new set of eyeballs because, I'm one of those guys that if I was 12 years old or 14, 15, or, like I said, even when I showed up in 2011, saw my first show, I would have become a Monster Jam fan. And so I think that there's a lot of Monster Jam fans out there that don't know they're Monster Jam fans yet. And we just all need to do our part to make it better, grow it, and see how many people we can put in the seats. And I assure everyone that would be listening to this that in even 12 months, they're going to continue to see a sport that evolves and grows and gets better. And the disclaimer to that is it's never going to be fully done, right? We're always going to grow, and some things are going to be good. Some things aren't going to be so good, and we're going to learn from that too. And I think Monster Jam approaches it that way and says, but thank goodness that we've got a group like Monster Jam as well that wants to push the limits, that wants to try new things, that wants to put something out there, like instead of calling it a wheelie competition, why don't we do a 2-wheel skill competition, right, and see how it goes. They put their name out there every time and say, can we try something different? Can we try something new? And let's see what people do. And but keep the feedback coming as well, because I think that that's the only way that a sport like Monster Jam continues to grow globally, is being able to say, hey, that's what we like, that's what we don't like. And hopefully hopefully in 20 years, we're all still talking about Monster Jam. That's a home run. So, but no, I love it. And I love it the most when people come and I get to meet them personally and say hello. And hopefully we can hopefully we can exceed expectations every once in a while and have those stars align and get a little bit of luck with a little bit of skill this coming freestyle up in New York this weekend. So we'll see.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate the time, Bryce. And anytime you want to hop back on, you got anything to say, we're always here for you. And thanks for being on.
Hey, appreciate you guys, man. We'll talk soon, I'm sure.